Thank you, Irina, for the question. Hello. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak and provide a perspective of the technology sector on what is happening now and will happen. Irina, to give a short answer to your question about the limits and whether maximum levels of efficiency and energy efficiency have already been reached, the short answer is that there is no limit for perfection and there is no technical limits too. As one clever person once said, the only thing that is invariable in the world is that everything always changes, and these technical limits and the technologies to reach them are constantly changing. And so are the conditions. Some technologies were recently too expensive, but now, given the rise in prices for greenhouse gas emissions, this is becoming cost-effective. Sometimes it may seem that everything has stalled, nothing is happening, that we have already reached the limits of energy efficiency, but this is probably a psychological effect. Technological shifts occur often, and in terms of energy efficiency, it happens in leaps and bounds. Sometimes a wake-up call or a bell rings, and such a bell has rung. What is happening in the world now, if we recall, has occurred in history more than once. There was the oil crisis of the 70s, when energy efficiency programs were launched very strongly, especially in the US, Asia and Europe. There was a super cycle at the beginning of the 2000s for raw materials prices, and a lot was also done to introduce new energy efficient technologies. But now a slightly longer answer, talking about our specific example, what we saw introducing energy efficiency technologies. I will show you an example of our company, which has developed a technology that simultaneously allows you to reduce CO2 emissions and makes that profitable for companies that reduce emissions. Could it possibly get any better? Decarbonization, which pays for itself and even is profitable. It would seem that all this should be implemented rapidly, but there are nuances. It is clear that an extensive active search for new solutions and technologies is going on globally, which is especially relevant for the oil industry. Some big global investors compare this cycle of decarbonization of the sector and the economy to a large super investment cycle, comparing it to the digitalization cycle, which created trillions of dollars of added value, including creating companies such as Google or Amazon, and the same is expected here. So we are one of such technologies. It didn't exist several years ago, but we have already commercialized and are implementing it. The effects are enormous. We are talking about 1 billion tons of CO2 emissions reduction across several industries while saving $50 billion annually. If you take a closer look at what we are doing, we now focus on the refineries. Usually when we think of an oil refinery, it is something very large, huge, expensive, which produces many valuable products, including things to which we come to the forum today. But at the same time, these refineries generate a lot of emissions. 1 billion tons, that is what 800 refineries in the world cost. If we look at why this is happening, processing oil, the 5 billion tons of oil processed annually in the world, the oil needs to be heated to hundreds of degrees. How? By burning a lot of hydrocarbon fuels. This is a recuperation system, which you can see in the middle, which allows the process to be more efficient. When you have already refined hot petroleum products leaving the rectification column, you transfer this heat to the incoming cold oil to avoid losing this heat. And in this way, you can heat the oil to 250 degrees and then burn additional fuel to catch up to 350 degrees. And now you have a looping process that you see in the pictures. Here is this energy recovery. The first 250 degrees and due to the heat exchangers you see in the pictures. They are different in shape, and there are dozens of such heat exchangers at refineries and hundreds at large refineries. And by the way, there is a figure that can help you understand the scale of energy intensity of the oil refining process. Every year globally, 6% of all oil that comes to refineries is burned to heat the remaining 94% of oil. In absolute terms, it is 300 million tons of oil. In money, it is about $200 billion, probably about half of Russia's oil production, if I remember the numbers correctly. And that goes to waste in the refinery, and there is a lot of room for increasing efficiency. So this is what happens in heat exchangers. Such falling appears, as you can see in the pictures. It acts as such an insulator, and if you look under a microscope, this is how it looks, and it is tough to remove. The heat transfer efficiency drops, and you have to burn more fuel, spend money on this fuel, and emit CO2 into the atmosphere. Remember the billion tons we talked about? How is the problem being solved now, or how has it been solved during the last 100 years? Here is how, using a manual method, a hydromonitor water under pressure. These heat exchangers are disassembled during a scheduled shutdown of the entire unit and cleaned with water under pressure. Until now it has been working in this old-fashioned way, and it worked well, as in a joke about an IT specialist. A son asks, why the sun rises in the east and sets in the west? Son, it works, and let it work as it. Let's not touch it. The industry has not been touched until now, but now we received this wake-up call in 2020 when decarbonization, climate change became relevant to everyone, and we learned that we needed to do something. And we in turn posed the question for ourselves in due time. This falling that accumulates in heat exchangers, in addition to being inconvenient, how much money is being lost because of it integrally? A giant figure has emerged, $50 billion annually for three industries: oil refining, petrochemistry and chemistry. At the same time, 1 billion tons of CO2 emissions are also emitted. That is, these are vast numbers of all scales, including global ones. And it is good to define a problem, but how do we solve it? We are now bringing a different approach to the industry. Previously, the approach was to clean out this dirt from time to time during plant shutdowns. We say instead, let's maintain these heat exchangers clean. That is, cleanliness is the guarantee of health. We all know this since childhood, and in industry it is also a guarantee of efficiency and environmental friendliness. And here until now nothing has been invented. There is no magic pill, there is no pill that would enable heat exchangers to be clean. We are used to brushing our teeth in the morning, taking a shower regularly to be clean. It is the same here. We were lucky to develop and patent a technology that allows quick heat exchanger cleaning, 5-7 times faster than other methods, and essential without disassembling the equipment. In conjunction with additional elements of the application of data science, innovation of the business model allowed us to start selling it to the oil industry. It was not easy, but the sales took off. Plus, this technology's additional effect can generate an opportunity for oil refining to switch to another type of heat exchange equipment. Two types of heat exchange equipment are used now in the industry: shell and tube on the left, the ones in red, and plate, the ones on the right in blue. Plate heat exchangers are 3 times more efficient in terms of heat transfer than shell and tube ones. They have been known for a long time, since 1923, for almost 100 years, but their share in oil refining is still less than 10%. The question is why? The answer is simple: they cannot be disassembled. So when they get dirty with falling, they cannot be cleaned. Our technologies allow cleaning plate heat exchangers and thus launching a massive transition of the oil industry to more efficient heat exchange equipment. This generates new models and capabilities: a heat exchanger as a service, heat exchange as a service, and so on. Our clients, we are already discussing a full-scale and system implementation with companies in Europe and Asia. If we take only oil refining, we're talking about 400 million tons of emissions reduction globally and 30 million tons in Russia. The additional economic effect is $30 billion for the world, and for Russia it is $2 billion a year. These are not costs, but an increase in profits. The approach we use is that we are a technology provider. That is, we don't take local jobs. We say, okay, guys, you cleaned the heat exchangers with local forces. We give you that technology. Please clean more often and more. Here, there is a benefit for everyone, including oil companies and local service providers, including various EPC contractors, equipment manufacturers. I already talked about the heat exchange equipment upgrade, and including various IT companies. To summarize, it seems such incredible technology, a significant effect, almost immediate effect. The first results can be obtained within 18 months. There is no need to invest money, it doesn't affect complex processes that need to be tested for years. There are no risks, many dozens of projects have already been completed, all participants receive benefits. What is the problem then? Why is there still no queue of customers, and what are the challenges? In fact, there are many challenges and difficulties both in Russia and abroad. Unfortunately, there is no time to list everything and take a long time to answer this question. There is much specificity, both regional and by industry. One of the things that I would like to highlight from the point of view of a technology company, a startup, is what we see. Often large companies that need to introduce new technologies to decarbonize and so on, they live with a fairly long-term mentality. They have big projects, they can't afford significant risks, the cost of a mistake is high. Therefore, everything happens slowly, often bureaucratic, and so on. And for startups like ours and many others, it's challenging to break through this wall. It takes much time, time is money, you need to finance all this while you pilot all these stories. Someone has to pay for it, you, the investors, and so on. You don't know what the result will be, whether you will hit or miss, and therefore many simply don't do it or stop doing it quickly enough. Maybe you remember there was a wave of clean tech technologies about 10-15 years ago. A lot of money came there and everything ended rather badly. That is, there were no big stories. Maybe Elon Musk with his Tesla is one of the great examples. And therefore, other large companies, which in themselves are not inclined to innovations and speed, are often engaged in implementing technologies. What else can be said here? It's clear that the change that is now taking place is a tsunami. It has come and it will come in waves. As you know, the wave comes in treats, and it has now come seriously, and we all need to adapt to this. My prediction is that those solutions and technologies that will win will be more concentrated. Like many things, many businesses in the digital world have become more concentrated. Google almost all over the world, Amazon, and so on. Here too, they will be prominent and big winners, and those who failed or somehow didn't manage to win enough will remain, but will remain as dinosaurs. Thank you.